Hi everybody, this is TJ with netpicks.com. In the last video I sent you, I shared with you my personal experience of the 3 worst trading mistakes that I ever made. And I thought I would follow it up with a new video for you this weekend and tell you about the best trades that I've ever made. And I want to start this video off by going back to those 3 worst trades. If you'll recall, one of those trades was a trade that I actually took when I shorted the British pound against the dollar, the very same trade where George Soros broke the Bank of England and made billions of dollars. And it was actually a really good trade, and the reason why I considered it one of my biggest mistakes was because I was just so inexperienced. I didn't have a plan. I didn't know where I was going with the trade, and after I made a good amount of profit, I decided just to kind of take the money and run. You'd think intuitively that that couldn't have been a bad idea, but the counterintuitive thing, which so much of successful trading is about what's counterintuitive, the counterintuitive thing would have been to hang in there and let the trade continue to develop. It ended up being a much, much bigger trade. So the irony is, for me anyway, that big mistake really ranks as one of the best trades I ever made. So it's not only one of my biggest mistakes, but for me personally it was one of my best trades, but not because of the direct outcome of that trade. It was because of what happened as a result of that trade later in my personal life. As if you'll recall, I took my earnings and I backpacked through Europe. Being a drummer, I was traveling with bongos, portable, right? I was able to sit in with musicians all over Europe, and I met a musician from Venezuela on Ponte Vecchio, actually, in Florence, Italy. And we played around Italy a bit and then went our separate ways. And it was the following year when I received a fax from him. If you'll remember, in those days, we weren't really using the internet. We were communicating by faxes. And he invited me to come visit him, and so I did. And I actually went to South America, and I visited him, and that's when I met my wife. And it's all because of that one trade that I made when I shorted the pound against the dollar. If I didn't make that trade, my life would have gone down a different path, and who knows where it would have led, but I have no regrets. I look back on that trade and thank my blessings, and for me personally, that was the best trade I ever made, and I don't know how I'm ever going to top it. Okay, but that's for me personally. This video is about trading. So I just shared a little bit of my own personal story with you, just to hopefully let you know that I'm just a real person like anybody else. I've got the same issues that anyone else has when dealing with trading. We're still having to take the trade, not knowing if it's going to win or lose. We're at the right edge of the chart, looking out into the blackness. You may have heard me use that metaphor. Every single trade is like that. I'd like to say now at this point that every trade that I make, if I execute it according to my trade plan, is just another carbon copy of the best trade that I ever made. Not the trade that found me my wife. You have to speed forward a bit. Years later, when I finally developed into a professional trader and I learned that valuable lesson that I shared with you in the last video, how to just lean on the system. From my point of view, as long as I lean on the system and execute the trade properly, then I am just duplicating the best trade that I ever made from a trader's point of view, and I've made a lot of them. And I thought maybe a great way to express that to you now, currently, with what's going on in the markets immediately, would be to share with you some of those trades this week and explain to you how these trades qualify as the best trades I ever made, like any other trade, so long as I executed it properly and followed my rules and just leaned on the system. Just let the system do what it does. And I want to start out by sharing with you this trade that happened this morning. As of this recording, non-farm payroll came out today. It came out right at the time that we start trading the Euro USD in the trade room. And there were a lot of people in there asking, gee, what should we do? Let me just roll this back and kind of show you what we were faced with. Non-farm payroll came out. You could see that there was a lot of choppiness, and all this, we're not in any of this. In fact, we're waiting. We're waiting for our 8:30 start time. The news release comes out, and we got the big spike upwards, and there was actually an entry. So even before we knew what was going to happen right here, we had to decide, gee, are we going to wait our 5 minutes and maybe take that long as a result of non-farm payroll with that extra long bar and the extra volatility? I mean, you don't know what's going to happen. What if that were to trigger in and just roll all the way up to a big, huge full target and you talked yourself out of the trade? That would be a mistake, don't you think? At some point, when in doubt, you just have to go with your trade plan and rely on it. It is objective. You are a human being. You are subjective. And subjectivity typically hurts your trade results. So when in doubt, lean on the system. So what happens? The next bar, total opposite. Even a longer bar and another short. I went a little bit too forward here, but if you didn't know what was going to happen, now you're wondering, gee, now should I get short? I got to cancel the long. Do I get short? Well, again, who am I to second guess? What do I know? We don't know what's going to happen next. All we know is that our system keeps winning, and we have this excellent winning percentage and these great results, over 2,000 pips just in the last couple months with a few day trades a day on the Euro US. So why would I second guess that? Well, on the very next bar, it canceled. That was an easy solution. I didn't have to do anything. The system mitigated itself. That is part of the system. Why we want to lean on it. And then we got a new short, and this one was even above support. It was a smaller trade. It was more current. Volatility was starting to slacken off a bit, and it stayed on a little more, and finally after 3-4 bars it triggered in, and we were in that trade. Like it or not, we had no choice. The trade plan said, take the trade. We took the trade. Is this one of the best trades I ever made? It was. Why? Because I stoically stuck with the system. I leaned on it, and I followed the system. And I know there were people in the room that didn't because they were just intimidated. And then look what happens. The sell-off occurs. We hit money management. We locked in a pip, and now we are in a completely risk-free trade. And it continues to develop. Down, down, down. Full target. That was a pretty big trade, too. That full target got us about 37, 38 pips after spread, but now we're trailing and we're locking in, and everything from here on out is just pure gravy. And we let the SST work for us and trail it down, down, down. And by the time we stop out here, we had another 60 pips. That one trade, 97 pips. Was that the best trade I ever made? Yes. It was a carbon copy. It was a carbon copy. Wouldn't it be great if you can take the best trade you ever made and then duplicate it over and over and over again? It's not the outcome of this one trade that qualifies it as the best trade ever made. Because any trade can win or lose. As traders, now we have to take another trade, don't we? We always have to take another trade, another trade, another trade. So do we make money if one trade wins or loses? Maybe momentarily, but now we have to take another trade. So you see the problem here? Or the solution? I like to think of it as a solution, not the problem. You lean on the system, and then it's your equity curve growing over time. That's why we're trading. That's the results we have to focus on. By making every trade you take the best trade you ever took, over and over and over again, you're going to grow your account and you're going to be a successful trader. Don't forget, you need to have a quality system that you can rely on that puts the odds in your favor every single time. I'm lucky, I have that. You're lucky too. You certainly have access to it if you'd like. The SST is available. It's not the only system out there that gives you an edge, but it's the one I know of. It's the one I prefer. It's the one I use every day in the trade room. So that's why I'm showing it to you. I can show you others too. I'm not going to be the same expert as I am as with my own system. I've done the work. I've taken the ownership internally, and now I just make sure I make every single trade the best trade I ever made. Let me show you two more examples that happened this week. I'm sure a lot of you listening to this probably don't spend too much time thinking about the grains or wheat futures. And I'd like to encourage you to maybe think about it because they're a very low cost margin compared to other futures. And if you want to be a day trader and finish your trading up in a matter of minutes, maybe 30 minutes tops, you can do quite well with wheat futures. We do this every day in the trade room. And yesterday, I'll show you an example of the best trade I ever made. It started out 2 minutes after the session is when we take our first trade, and we had this long entry here. It's the same as what I showed you on the Euro US, only it's going long. This is TradeStation, so the symbols look a little different, but it's the exact same system working the exact same way. So I don't have to learn anything new other than where to put my order at the plus sign, maybe a 1 tick adjustment above the big round number of 630. So 630 and a quarter, and it jumps up and it hits the money management level, and then it comes back down and stops out for only 1 tick. And little did we know at the time that it was going to keep going higher and higher and higher, right? So you take some chances when you lock in aggressively, but that's part of the system, and then we have tools to deal with it. We have a somewhat new setup that we call Get Back on Board, or Get Bob. Maybe some of you have heard of it. That was the second trade, and we took it right here. And we bought 2 ticks above that bar, and here's the entry here, 632. We were targeting 634, and then we trailed the pink line. And you could see it just kept on going and going and going. Finally, didn't even stop out here because our stop was below it, following the prior bar, all the way up to here. In fact, that one kept going a little too, and we ended up stopping out here, right in this area. Okay? Well, on wheat, that was a trade that went over 10 points. And at $50 a point, that's real money. I mean, that's a pretty decent sized trade. We ended up with this awesome result yesterday. And the day before, we had a similar one. We ended up, I think, with over 10 points on the session. The thing I want to call your attention to is that we started at 932 and we stopped out of that trade at about 9:56-ish. Okay, so 25 minutes in the trade for both trades, and we were done. 25 minutes, $500 and something result, 1 session. Best trade I ever took. Why? Because it's the same trade that I always take. It's the trade that is my trade plan and my trade system. So as long as I lean on it, I duplicate it over and over and over again, and I've now been able to take the best trade I ever made and continually make it over and over and over again each and every session. This is the Russell Lee Mini. This one was also yesterday, and we have recently changed our trade plan, so we're also starting 2 minutes after the session. And so there was a reversal long that we were already in that happened in the pre-market. And I don't mean we were in it, but the system itself was in it. So we were just tracking it, and now we're looking for a fresh new setup. And it came right here. Let me just open this up a little bit and I'll show you. This is where the SST identifies an increase in price momentum. So if you were already in the trade, you'd be able to add to your position. But we were flat. We were waiting for a brand new setup. So a lot of traders are like, gee, I don't have confidence in this trade. I don't know if we should take it. And from my point of view, it's like there's no choice. It's the setup. That's the trade that we need to take. It's the first trade of the day. It's what we always do. That's the trade plan. I'm not going to second guess. Win or lose, it's just a trade. Win or lose, we still have to take another trade after. We have to show up tomorrow. We have to show up Monday. So we took the trade. 736.8, targeting 733.7. And it went down and down and down, hit the full target, and we just kept trailing down, down, further, and finally came off right here. That was the best trade that I ever made. Why? Because it was a carbon copy of the trades I always make. That complete trade made over 9 points on the Russell. That's a $900 profit for 2 positions. So the moral of the story is, once you've made your mistakes, you want to figure out how to solve them and not repeat them. I told you in the last video what that was. It was to lean on the system. Once you have a system that has proven itself to be worthy, you have to go about doing the work you need to do to build your belief structure up to the point where you can trade it as intended and benefit from the edge that it gives you over time. Because you've got to take that next trade, and wouldn't it just be simpler to be able to lean on it and make your best trade ever each and every time? Think about it. This is TJ with netpicks.com. I hope everyone has a great weekend, and I'll see you on the next video.